Hi, I'm G, welcome back to my art channel, and today I'm sharing my step-by-step process for this marker graffiti. This piece was a commission and I included a lot of ideas from the client, things to do with football strips and football colours and also basketball strips and colours. So a lot of those ideas went into this and got penciled out, and then I inked it using a 0.3 FINELINER pen. The lettering was going to use a range of blue tones from light to dark. So the first thing that I did was laid down my very lightest blue tone across all of the letters, and I'd chosen Cool Aqua for this, which is a pale blue, but it's got a nice kind of marine sea kind of quality to it. I guess that's why they call it Cool Aqua. So as you see me work my way across each of the letters, you'll see I'll alternate between using the fine tip for some very, very small areas that need colouring in, but I'll also go for the big chunky chisel tip when I've got a large letter or a large area that's going to need colouring. It also helps me colour that area quickly, especially when I'm blending a top and bottom of this letter, like you can see, going back and forth between the top and the bottom so they don't get any drying lines. So with the base colour of the letters on, I thought I'd put the base colour of the shadow on. And this was an idea that I took directly from the football strip, which has got a very claret and blue kind of flavour to it. So I chose a kind of a dark red, somewhere between a sort of red and a burgundy, to be the actual shadow colour that I was going to use against the blues. And you see me alternate between chisel and fine tip depending on what the area demanded. So here you see me tracing with my finger where the light source is going to be coming in from. So I'm giving myself an idea of where shadow is going to be on these letters. So in this real-time section you can see me begin to add my first layer of shadow to the letters, and I'm choosing blue pearl here. So it's a step up from Cool Aqua, but it's not a massive step up. And now I'm beginning to put on my kind of splatter and also shading effects that start on the letter. And what I want each letter to have is to have it Cool Aqua at the bottom, going up through then the 3 or 4 other colours that I've got of blue, so it's very, very dark at the top. And you'll see what I mean once I've got all of the colours on this particular letter. But I'm starting just here with going up to blue pearl and beginning to put in these little sort of curved edges, that classic sort of graffiti splatter type effect. And also I'm shading back and forth, so that I hopefully get a fairly even layer of colour on here, and that I don't get it, drying lines or areas that look too streaky. I put in a little circle there because what I'm trying to do here is not just do dark dots on the light Cool Aqua, but also leave some of the Cool Aqua showing like little bubbles within the colour. So as I transition to the top, you can see I've done most of that flat colour all the way up to the top of this first letter, which is both an A and a dragon. And then you can see me just filling in at the bottom a couple of these little dots and little splattery kind of effects after I've done the main kind of block colour. Now you can see me going up to my next darkest colour. This is Capri blue, so this is a step up from blue pearl, and the way you see me start with this is to put shadow into the parts where I've just done blue pearl. So the shadows are going to be a bit different and change as I add each colour. And then you can see me going and adding this sort of body colour by putting in the kind of dots and splatters of that sort of classic graffiti sort of painted style. Because obviously I'm not using spray paint, so I've got to try and kid people that it's got that spray paint feel. And one of the ways of doing that is by using this kind of like splats and dots kind of effect, like you're using an aerosol can. So as I move on and transition to show that the whole letter's been coloured, you can see what it's now beginning to look like with 3 colours on there, but I've got 2 more colours to add, getting progressively darker with my blues. So here you start off with Azure, or Azure, which is a lovely, again, marine blue, so it's got a nice kind of sea kind of blue feel to it, kind of Mediterranean feel. And you can see me only putting that shadow in the Capri blue areas to start with, and then I start adding the kind of bubbles and splatter effects again. So what I'm doing is gradually changing each letter, so it's going light, then slightly darker, then a mid-tone. Now I'm on my penultimate dark tone before I add my very, very last tone. So Azure is my penultimate dark blue tone. So as you can see, all of the azure on the letter done. It's time for me to move on to my very last dark blue tone, which is going to be near the top of this, on the dragon's head, or the top of the A. So you can see me just putting a few little dashes and little bits on the edges of where I'd put in some azure. And now I'm going to move up to the center, and around the dragon's neck I start adding that sort of solid body color of dark again with the little splatters and the little bubble type effects. So it's only his head that's going to be in the darkest navy blue. So with all the colours done, you can see that gradual change from light at the bottom to dark near the top. And now it's time to roll those colours out across all of the letters in the name. So you can see me using blue pearl here. I'm going in with blue pearl and putting that across each of the letters, leaving the bottom part of each letter to still be cool aqua, but putting blue pearl across all the others, again with that kind of dotted bubbly effect to show the transition between the cool aqua and the blue pearl, but filling it right up to the top of each of the letters with colour. Here you can see me adding Capri blue and doing the same. So I'm starting a bit further up each letter now, so you get a decent amount of each colour before you see me transition and change into the next darkest colour. One thing that I'm careful to do is to try and make sure that where my colours do change, they don't change in just a straight line across the word, across the name. I want them to change sort of a bit more undulating, almost with a kind of a wave or a curve kind of effect. So you won't see where blue pearl turns into Capri blue as a straight line. It'll sort of have this gradual up, down kind of wavy effect to it, hopefully. At least that's what I was trying for. So you might have noticed that there are a couple of shapes that I don't shade in this way. And here's a close-up on the left-hand side. You can see I am shading these shapes with a straight kind of effect. And that's just to give these shapes a bit of a contrast to everything else in the picture, which has got that bubbly splatter effect. I decided to shade these two shapes just with straight edges, like I said, for contrast, for difference. Now, as you see me add the azure in this section, you'll see there's a little smiley face that's been stuck to the paper up there in the top left. And that's just my visualization of my light source. It's kind of important now because I'm putting some little shadow areas on some of the edges of the letters. But it will be really helpful later on when I'm doing things like adding the white highlights to have this little representation of exactly where the light source is. And it helps me then put light on the right sides of each of the letters and the edges of each of the letters. And here you can see me adding my final dark blue tone, and it really is just going across the top of the letters. So most of the letters are going to be a light blue to mid blue kind of tone. So at this point I decided that some of my red shadows weren't dark enough, so using the light source up there I decided to make the sides of the letters that were facing directly away from the light source darker. So I just give them a second layer of the dark red that I'd chosen. I think it's called FIREBRICK. So what you can see me doing here is just filling in those pieces of each of the shadow on each of the letters that faces directly away from the light source. So with most of the colours on the letters done, I start thinking about the background. And for this I decided to rely on a really bright red that would contrast with the kind of darker earthy red that I'd already used. So I chose lipstick red here, which is a lovely bright red. And I thought what I was going to do is draw the bubbles, but keep the bubbles fairly simple and not too many little splatters. Lots of kind of medium to small splatters. And from there I decided I was going to darken the shadows again. And for this I used a sort of a technique where you can see me shading a heavy black area that gradually sort of tapers out to become some fine lines. So it looks like it's dark on one edge and then it's gradually getting lighter. A sort of a kind of a hatching effect, yeah? Where the lights are close together, the lines look darker. Where the lines get further apart, they look as though a sort of mid-tone or mid-shadow. So that's what you can see me adding again to the parts of the letters that are facing directly away from the light source, just giving them a bit of extra shadow, a bit of extra oomph. And while I have those black fineliners to hand, it's time to start making the entire word pop out from the background. So I'm going to do two ways of doing that. And the first one is to add darker, thicker shadow all the way around the outer edge of the entire word, of the entire name. So you can see me here using a very, very thick, I think it's 0.8 fineliner that I've got, to just give a much thicker outline around the edge. And you know, I say that's thick, but I've seen some graffiti where the black outline edge is twice as thick as what I've done there. And also what I could have done is varied my line width a little bit. So it could have been thicker and then tapering to be slightly thinner in some areas. But I went with a slightly more fat, constant, dark, thick outline around the whole thing, just to make it pop out from the background. So I said I would outline it in two different ways. So here's the second part, and here I'm using a yellow Posca paint pen to go around the entire word, the entire name as well. But this time I'm sort of outlining the thick black outline that I just put on. I'm not going over the black, I'm leaving that. So you've got almost a double outline to this word. It's got a heavy black outline and then it suddenly changes to being a bright yellow. So I'm using a primary color scheme, blue, red and yellow, but in classic tradition I'm relying mostly on red and blue and just using the yellow very carefully to accent the other colors. So with the lettering pretty much done, it's time to focus on some of the smaller little ideas. So the basketball I just did using a combination of pumpkin, bright orange, red, and some of that FIREBRICK red that I'd already used for the shadow on the letters. And then I had to do the red devil because they are a big Manchester United family. So I was told I had to include something that was to do with Manchester United. So I got the red devil peeking out from behind the Y and holding his pitchfork, and he's spearing a light blue top of the letter Y. So if you understand the rivalry between Manchester United and Manchester City, you'll know what that's about, and I apologize to any City fans out there. Now you can see me, I've put my my light source up on the picture again, and I'm going to start doing the white highlights using a Signo white gel pen. So this is a nice gel pen that's got a nice thick fluid white gel that comes out of it, and it's quite opaque. It's very opaque, in fact. So you can see me now using the light source to figure out which edge, which side of each of these shapes and each of these letters I need to put my white highlights on. And the white highlights will hopefully also make the lettering pop out a little bit more from the background, and you'll also be able to see the top of the letters clearly defined. So you'll be able to spell out the name Harry. Harry is the name, and hopefully those white highlights will really make that a lot clearer, just in case you were looking at it and you're like, oh, I can't quite tell what name he's doing yet. I have to say, putting on the white highlights is possibly my favourite part of every single graffiti picture, because it's the moment when everything sort of comes together, and things that might not have been too clear earlier hopefully are made way more clearer with the white highlights. So there's the finished piece. Let me know in the comments below what you think of it, if you think the colour scheme was good, if you like this angular graffiti that I went for this time. And don't forget to subscribe, like and share. And if you want to check out my previous graffiti piece that I did using watercolour markers, then there should be a link on the screen and also a link down below. Thanks so much for watching.